Hi everybody, hello and welcome to another episode of the In the Mixer podcast. I'm joined today by Sam Jones from Sydney FC as we continue our season preview from the reigning premiers, not reigning champions, but certainly one of the form teams in the competition. How are you, Sam?
Mate, I am good. How are you?
I'm not doing too badly, mate. I've got a drink in my hand. It is a beautiful, beautiful day down here in Melbourne. I'm sure it's similar for you up in Sydney. And I'm pretty keen to talk on A-League this evening. So let's just fire straight off, and I'm going to list some of the achievements from the recent season, and you can just put your feet back up and listen for a moment as we kind of praise your team. Foundation club, obviously Sydney FC, initially given the Hollywood FC tag. Probably the first real superstar marquee of the competition in Dwight Yorke, as well as the likes further down the track of Alessandro Del Piero. And for the last few years, they really have taken football in the A-League to another level with premierships in 16-17 and then again in 17-18. Championships 3 times, 2006, 2010 and 2017. And an FFA Cup in 2017 as well. Firstly, as a fan, Sam, what attracted you to Sydney FC and how long have you been a member and fan of the team?
Well, I have grown up in Sydney, Northern Beaches, kind of in the Manly area. So they're, I guess, my local team. They started when I would have been, 10 years old. Yeah, I'm 23 now, so yeah, it would have been 10. So I remember following the first season with Dwight Yorke and all the big signings and stuff, but maybe 4 seasons after that, just didn't really have a way of getting to the games too often. But I'm entering my 4th season now as a member, and I've been going as much as I can over the last 4 or 5 years. It's as you were saying, it's been a pretty good period to be a Sydney fan. We haven't had too many issues over the last 2 or 3 years, so it's been pretty fun going to watch every week and pretty much getting a win every week. So yeah, it's been good.
You lead a blessed life, Sam.
It's pretty good. I can't complain.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. So, current club owner, David Traktovenko. I've probably butchered that pronunciation, and if he's listening, I do apologise. I'm sure he's a fan of the show. He is the majority stakeholder. He's a Russian billionaire, which is always fun to see around footballing circles. As a fan, what is your read on the current key stakeholders within the Sydney FC group and how they operate kind of as a business behind the scenes?
The owner, David Traktovenko, butchered it as well.
Let's just call him the Tractor moving forward.
Yeah, we'll just call him Dave.
Yep.
He's been really good. We haven't really had any financial struggles since he's come on. With Danny Townsend as the CEO as well, we've been getting some pretty good off-field signings. I think we last season overtook Victory for the first time as the highest earning club off the pitch, so that's pretty good. He's got heaps of new sponsors on board, and we just announced a new partnership with Fujitsu Air Conditioning this past week, and they're going to be on the shorts of the A-League and on the front of shirt for I'm not sure about the W League, but definitely the Youth League, and I think the W League as well. So, Danny Townsend's been great in terms of the business side, and David, the owner, is definitely not holding back. He's giving the club money where they need it, and it seems like it's operating fairly well, and it's pretty good, breaking records, I guess. Victory have definitely set the benchmark throughout the whole course of the A-League, so to knock them off last year was pretty good, pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's never the sexiest portion to talk about the commercial aspects of the game, but I think Sydney, since they came through, and I've been watching them since that very first season of the A-League, when it all kicked off and when they put together that pretty phenomenal side, to be fair to them. And really, they've set new benchmarks in terms of, kit sponsorships and long-term deals and long-term kit suppliers and front of shirt sponsors and commercial sponsors and business dinners and all that sort of stuff that really makes the club tick over and get into profit. I think they've been the benchmark for a very long time. They may be have been surpassed by Melbourne Victory in terms of the way they operate their commercial interests, but certainly for a long time one of the few clubs that have been operating at a profit each and every year, despite paying pretty decent wages and with a long-running history of some of the marquees we spoke about, like Del Piero, Dwight Yorke, and even the quality of the international players they've brought in. And we'll talk about them further once we get down the page a little bit, Mijewski last year and Bobo. So looking at the last 5 years for the club, in the 13-14 season, they finished in 5th position, 14-15 in 2nd spot, 15-16 7th, and then 16-17 and 17-18 1st in the league as the minor premiers. I just like to say premiers. I would prefer to say champions, but we're not currently in that environment. And a semi-final loss last year. Now, you did mention that you've been a member now for about 4 seasons, so I don't think you could ever be accused by anyone, certainly not myself, of being a fair weather fan, having sat through probably 2 seasons where they did underperform a little bit.
Yeah, I went down with a few mates to the grand final in what would have been 2015 or 2016, the one where we lost 3-0 to Victory at Amy Park, and that was pretty heartbreaking day, I'm not gonna lie. And yeah, the team sort of fell apart after that, I guess, finishing 7th the year after. But yeah, it's been very good the last couple of years. But yeah, I guess before that we sort of had a few periods where we were just scraping into the finals. Even one year with Del Piero, we finished 7th and missed out on the finals completely. And then I think the year before that we finished 5th or 6th and got knocked out by Wellington in the final. So, yeah, we've definitely had some tough times. So, yeah, it's been very nice to be on top of the table the last 2 seasons. And, yeah, there's a good vibe around the club. But, yeah, I think losing Arnie to the Socceroos was a bit sort of unexpected. And, yeah, it's got all the fans a little bit nervous for the upcoming season, but yeah, I think we're in good hands on the Corica. So
I'll hold you on that one. I'll hold you on that one because we'll dedicate some time specifically to Steve Corica a little bit further down in the show. I think one of the interesting things that you hit on was the way that the team struggled during the Del Piero contract, which, like, obviously Del Piero was phenomenal for the league in terms of its international exposure. I think his output individually was brilliant. But I think it also sets kind of a template for the rest of the league in that, hey, potentially these big name marquee signings, while, you know, kind of being great commercially, they probably don't present the greatest opportunities for other players in the squad because you're, you know, even though we are a salary cap league and there's a certain amount each week and he was outside of that, a club still has an operating cost that isn't bottomless, and there will still have been impacts on the rest of the squad based on the wages that they were paying him. And I think what you have seen in that uptick in form in the last 5 seasons is getting away from that big name marquee signing and trying to have a more balanced approach to the total squad and getting a higher quality across, you know, 15 players with, you know, 5 or 6 smaller juniors involved in that. And I think they really have set a standard in terms of having an overall squad quality rather than a specific marquee player that they made so famous early in the year. And one of the big things that we've spoken about, and it keeps coming up throughout these previews, is we talk about the teams that have probably the biggest financial clout, Sydney FC obviously being one, Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City being the others, that are able to put together their squads and have, you know, 20 players signed by, you know, the first round really of the FFA Cup, because they can afford to pay an extra month's wages or 2 months' wages. I think Sydney FC, in a lot of respects, deserves a ton of credit for setting standards in that part of the game, whereas that level of professionalism and having full 12-month contracts and paying wages rather than being on a weekly or monthly basis, but for a full year and full season contract, has really taken the league to another level. And as an outside fan and not someone that likes Sydney all that much, having consistently struggled against them, they have done a tremendous amount for the success of the league, and I think it deserves to be respected and applauded in a sense.
Yeah, I agree, and I definitely will put that down to Arnie. After that season where we didn't make the finals, he definitely went back to the drawing board and sort of recruited really well across the board. So yeah, like you're saying with Del Piero, like obviously he was a weapon on the field. Sometimes he was a little bit of a liability in defence. It felt like we were defending with 10, but yeah, you sort of forgave him for that because yeah, just what he did on the ball was just insane. It was so good to watch. But yeah, we definitely put a lot of eggs in that basket, and across the rest of the team were a little bit weaker during his time here, and yeah, definitely showed in where we finished on the ladder. But I think, yeah, Arnie really recruited well. I remember that season where he brought in like just heaps of really good Australian players, like Wilkinson, Zulo. He brought back David Carney, who I wasn't the biggest fan of, but yeah, he definitely played really well. He had like the Mariners' greatest scorer of all time, Matt Simon, on the bench, and whatever your opinion of Simon is, he definitely did what Arnie asked of him each and every week and each and every time he came on. And then, yeah, we got young players like Brillante and O'Neill. Yeah, they all sort of came in at a similar time, and I think Arnie did a really good job in getting what Australian players he could in those key positions and sort of sticking with them, and then yeah, sprinkling a little bit of extra flair and stuff with the foreign players that we got in, and then yeah, a little extra further flair on the marquees that we've got. And yeah, the last couple of seasons with Bobo and Ninkovic is yeah, definitely reaped the rewards. They've been outstanding. So yeah, I think Arnie's really yeah, he really deserves the credit for that balance across the squad. And I think we're still in good shape now because of that plan that he sort of set up in the first place.
No, absolutely. I think they're all very good notes, and I won't lie, it's come up more than once, so I've already kind of buried the lead a little bit, but I'm not the biggest fan of Graham Arnold or really Ange Postecoglou before him. But like, I'm not an idiot. I completely understand that they do have good traits as managers, and I think Graham Arnold's biggest asset, and what has been a huge asset for Sydney over the last few years, is that he finds a way to make players believe in him and believe in the system and believe in the club. So like he's able to get guys like Matt Simon to sign on and be a player that plays 15 minutes every week and still gives as much to the cause as he can, and he finds a good way to get someone like Bobo, who wasn't on marquee wages for the longest time, involved in the club under the cap and caring more about winning than actually getting his payday. Someone like Adrian, you kind of have to... We'll go through this a little bit further when we talk about the players out, but you kind of have to think, if Graham Arnold was staying around the club for another season, would we have seen some of the outlay of players? But yeah, I think credit to him. He does a tremendous job about getting players invested in the team's success above and beyond their own performance and their own role in that particular team. So yeah, credit to you, but time to slam the door shut on the Graham Arnold era as far as I'm concerned, because it opens up the league a little bit more. But let's talk about last season. First in the league, obviously, tremendous performance. I think from round 1 right through to round 27, set new standards for the league in terms of professionalism and aptitude and consistency. But pretty tough to take semi-final loss. What were your thoughts on last season? And more specifically, what was your greatest frustration from the 17-18 year that you'd like to see improved?
Well, starting with the highlights, I don't really even know where to begin. We had that many last season. I guess the major points would be winning the league by 14 points and beating Western Sydney 5-0, I guess, away at ANZ. But also clean sweeping victory in the regular season for a second straight year. That was really good. I love the 6-0 against Perth. I brought a ton of mates to that game who were part-time football fans, and they're absolutely loving it. We scored some crackers that night and played really well, so that sticks out as well. But yeah, you can't go past the greatest frustration being that semi-final defeat. Yeah, I think it sort of started like we had a cracker of a season and lost away to Newcastle towards the end of the year, and that was a fantastic day up there at McDonald Jones, despite the result. Yeah, Newey played really well, but after that game, the semi, like for me personally, and I know a lot of other Sydney fans, just felt like a bit of a formality because us and Newcastle were like head and shoulders above the rest of the league throughout pretty much the whole season. It kind of felt like victory after beating them 3 times in the regular season, and then finishing 4th. We're just sort of just there for the taking. We just had to sort of go through the motions, get the win, and we'd be off to the final again. And there was a lot of talk of back-to-back championships, and I think the players and the fans and everyone kind of just got a bit ahead of themselves. And yeah, obviously credit to Victory for getting that result. They were so much better on the night, and they dug deep. And yeah, it was even more frustrating that it was Antonis who scored the winner, because yeah, he was a a fan favourite back in the day, and we were singing his name after he scored the own goal just to take the piss, and then he broke all of our hearts by scoring the winner. So that would easily be the greatest frustration, and to be honest, one of the only frustrations for the whole season. It was such a good year, and we played such good football. It was just really frustrated we didn't quite get there in the end, because I think a Sydney-Newcastle grand final was probably deserved on form, and it would have been really good to sort of settle that, because us and Newey had a win, a draw, and a loss each. So would have been good to have that tiebreaker, but you can't change what happened, and it was a great season, and hopefully we'll go on better this year.
You can only hope, mate, but as far as I'm concerned, and I think the rest of the other 9 pundits across their teams, Sydney's time has now passed and it's time for somebody else. No, but all jokes aside, I think you provided pretty great analysis there. They have been pretty much the standard flag bearers for the competition. I think the only really what if about that side is the fact that they maybe underperformed on the continental stage. And obviously, I think a big part of that comes with the fact that the Asian Champions League is so often played during our off-season, and keeping those squads together, those groups, those contracts together throughout that period can be incredibly tough. But I'm sure even Graham Arnold himself, if he is ever going to return to the A-League, will be looking to get back involved and have another crack at that competition, likely with the Sydney FC again.
Yeah, definitely. So it was really frustrating with that Asian Champions League. Just like Arnie was he loved getting out in the media and just talking it up. And I think a lot of it was mind games, but sometimes we're just like, mate, shut up. You're putting a target on our back. And him going out saying we could win the Asian Champions League. And then I think just all the games were like, the FFA did really well in scheduling, but all the games just sort of, he didn't really rotate the squad at all. Just like we had all these great youngsters like Zavella and Calva and all these guys that could have done a job in the A-League, but he still played like all the first choice team in the A-League, even though we were like so far in front. And often we sort of felt like maybe he should have like concentrated on the Asian Champions League a little bit more, rested the stars during the league, just because we almost had it wrapped up by the time sort of February came around. And I don't know, it's one that got away, that Asian Champions League season, definitely, because we could have given it a real tilt, but it was very frustrating to watch. Hopefully we go better this season in that Champions League, but it's all a very delicate balance in squad rotation and stuff like that. So we'll see how we go.
I can actually give you a bit of sneaky backstage advice on that one, and it's half me putting my football manager hat on, playing that game for years and years, and the other half what I know from my own dealings locally with the teams down here. Within A-League contracts, you're allowed to have both assist and goal bonuses, but you aren't allowed to have them for any continental competition. So for big players and starting 11 players, quite often they don't want to potentially miss out on increased pay by missing A-League fixtures to play in Asian Champions League games, which is what you quite often see the likes. I think you gave great examples in Chris Zavella, Aaron Calva, which is what you quite often see a lot of those players involved in those matches, because they're not allowed to have the same performance-based or appearance-based incentives in their contracts.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's obviously a massive flaw in the system. But definitely something that you'd like to see improved in the next 12 months or so. But yeah, definitely I think Sydney are probably our best chance this coming season in terms of success in that competition. And you do want to see it a little bit more. Like, I know we obviously don't have the financial clout to compete with a lot of the teams in the Chinese or Japanese or even Korean divisions, but certainly in terms of conditioning, athleticism, match performance, we are really at an elite level, and you quite often see players that move from the A-League into European divisions like the Premier League or the Championship, really don't have much of a gap in terms of their overall match fitness. It's more around their technical quality, and I think the great work that first Anthony Crea and then Andrew Clark at Sydney have put in has kind of brought the league up to that standard, which is very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good to see, like, we're going to miss Clarkie at Sydney, but it's good to see him follow Arnie to the national team, because I think that can only benefit the whole nation. So, yeah, he was incredible in the work that he did on that conditioning, like you said. But yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see how he goes in a limited time with the national team, because I think they'll really benefit from his conditioning skills.
So what we might go through is some of the players out throughout the course of the last season. Oh, actually, no, before we do that, we'll talk about some of the FFA Cup and pre-season results. FFA Cup performance over the last few years has been pretty phenomenal. You'll be entering your third final in the last 4 years, I believe, and aiming to be the first team to win 2 and 2 on the trot. What do you think is the key or the secret behind consistent good performance and consistent final appearances for Sydney in that competition?
Yeah, look, I can't put my finger on it. It's like there's been a couple of real close calls, both this season and last season in the FFA Cup, especially that Avondale game where it was 2-2 at full time after we took that 2-0 lead. We ended up, running out 4-2 winners after extra time, which I was watching that and I couldn't believe it. Like, Avondale played really well. There's another one where Cairns won. They went up 1-0, and then we ended up coming back and winning 2-1 with a real late winner. I can't put my finger on what we do that. We just sort of keep progressing, but we haven't really had too many home games across the last 3 seasons either. It's been really good to see. It must be like just the pre-season or something. Like we're well conditioned. We're a fit team. Like we were saying before, I think that's down to the conditioning coaches and stuff. But even this season, we're looking fit in all the games that we play. And it's really good that I guess in a knockout competition we can sort of dig deep and still go for the result. Even staring down the face of a penalty shootout and stuff. It's really good to see. It's going to be fantastic going to a third straight final. I think it's really cool that it's against Adelaide again, and even though they did a draw for the final, Adelaide get the home final because I think we owe them one after we got the home last season. So it should be good. I'm going with a couple of friends. We're going down to Adelaide for that game in a couple of weeks. So it's really exciting. Should be good. Hopefully we can go back to back in the FFA Cup. Unfortunately we couldn't in the league, but it should be exciting, and I'm not complaining that we keep making the final each year, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, 2 tough fixtures as well. I think what people forget when they look at these things and see it as being a lower division side, they forget quite easily that the NPL sides have been playing as a squad for 12 months really, and gone through their full season and are at full condition and full match sharpness and fully aware of the tactics that they're going to be playing. To go away to Cairns, which is, if you've been up there yourself, is a relatively unique climate in terms of the humidity within Australia. That's a tough ask for a side playing their first real competitive friendly. And then I'm not sure if you're familiar with Avondale. They are based down here in Melbourne, just in the northern suburbs. They have gone on a super aggressive recruitment drive over the last few years, picking up the best NPL talent available to them. They have Jonathan Germano, who is an ex-Melbourne Heart, Melbourne City midfielder playing for them, probably on an equivalent to A-League wage each week. And they've also got Joey Katabian, who for a long time played at Melbourne Victory and then got his first real starting A-League opportunity at Brisbane Roar and is now playing at an NPL level with them. So even though they are playing at an NPL level, they probably have one of the larger wage budgets outside of A-League competition and have been super aggressive in terms of their development as a club, and I'm sure they definitely would have been pulling out all the stops to try and beat Sydney. There was talk in the lead of that game that they were going to try and bring on Andrea Perlo to make a bit of an effort.
We're a bit nervous about that one.
I'll be completely honest, I would have lost my shit if he had have actually come down. I would have rocked up. Mate, so good. I would have started up my own Etsy, making No Perlo, No Party t-shirts, and I would have been a millionaire retiring on the funds from this podcast. It would have been a great one to see, but I think you downplayed it a little bit there in terms of the performances. Two very tough fixtures I think they had, albeit against lower league opposition, and they came through.
Mate, Avondale, they were so good. Like they even had Boland was awesome, Camp Sober. Like they've got such a good squad, and after seeing them win that NPL final the week before in dramatic fashion, coming back from 4-1 down. Or was it? No. It was 3-1 down.
Yeah, it was a semi-final. They lost the eventual final, but they were 3-1 down with about 10 minutes remaining in the 100, in extra time, and equalised to make it 3-3, and then went ahead 4-3. But the other one to pick up about that squad is Kane, Shepherd and Boland have both been picked up by A-League sides. So obviously some great talent running through that team, and Sydney still, despite undergoing quite a bit of squad change and changing the coaching structure and setup and all that sort of thing, still had enough. They still had enough of that edge about them to get beyond that fixture, albeit in a bit of extra time.
Yeah, and it's like, as a fan, I love seeing the NPL teams do well, and it would have been great to make them a little bit later. I love that we smashed the Wanderers in the semi, but seeing the Cairns team and Avondale play so well against us, it would have been good to see them just for their own sake to go a bit deeper in the competition. But unfortunately, we sort of had to get past them for our own sake. So it'd be great to see them have another tilt next year and do equally as well, if not better.
And I'm sure Apia Lockouts online shop sold out of replica player jerseys once they knocked out Melbourne Victory as well. So it's always good to see.
That was awesome to see.
Yeah,
especially as a Sydney fan.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I was Melbourne Heart since their foundation. I am now Melbourne City. If I have to listen to them, celebrate another championship, that might be it for me. I might go and start up a netball podcast or some really obscure sport. Like there's an Australian ice hockey league that I'm sure there's a gap in the market for that I could go at. Credit to them, they're a good team, but I also love and adore seeing them lose.
That's awesome.
So we'll probably deal with one of the more negative aspects of the most recent 12 months, and we'll start talking about some of the players that have left Sydney FC over the last year. Geordie Boyce has moved over to Japan to V Varan Nagasaki. What are some of your favourite memories about the big Dutchman, and how big a hole do you think he leaves in the Sydney FC squad?
Well, I just love Geordie Boyce's personality. He was so funny. He definitely got around like all the fans all the time. When we won the FFA Cup, he was put on the sunnies and he's doing these crazy dances and just getting amongst it, and it was so fun to watch. And I think that moment early in the season, he just sort of endeared himself to the whole Sydney FC supporter base, and he sort of always gave his all. He really he started a lot of our play from the back. His passes sort of across the field diagonally to either a high flying Zulu or Wilkshire, or even to Ninkovic and Mijewski and stuff like that. He'd just find their feet just every time, and it was really good to see. I think I know you won't like this, but in the FFA Cup against City, when they played at Leichhardt Oval, his free kick was incredible, and that was sort of one of the first times I'd sort of seen him even take one. And I don't know, he played with so much passion, you couldn't help but just smile every time you saw him celebrating or getting around it. We'll definitely miss him.
And even though I am the most ardent Melbourne Heart and Melbourne City footballer, I do appreciate good performances and good players. It was a cracking strike, and I'm not sure what it is about Dutch centre-backs, but they consistently seem to take free kicks. I'm not sure if that's a throwback to Ronald Koeman, the famous Barcelona centre-back during the 90s, but it was an absolute peach. I think what we kind of forget sometimes with these international players when they come in, particularly the likes of players that played their careers in England or Holland or whatever else, even an FFA Cup win, it might actually be for a player like that who is quality and who is one of the stars of the league, the first actual team trophy that they've ever won. It happens more often than not than what you'd think. And I think that's why we see the likes of him, the likes of Bruno Fornaroli when we won it, the likes of Isaias crying when Adelaide lost the final. Like for a lot of these players, team trophies and team results like that are so incredibly rare.
That is true, and because they often play in leagues with like twice as many teams, so it's a lot more competitive in terms of those trophies. Like, obviously, there are a lot more standout teams that consistently win trophies over in Europe. Here, it's sort of a bit more spread out, but that's a great point that they might not have won one until they've come to the A-League. So it is good to see them playing with passion and playing with heart, and we'll definitely miss Geordie Boyce. It was sad to see him go.
Yeah. So the next one, Luke Wilshere, only had one season with Sydney FC. He is now 37 years old. He returns to his boyhood club at Wollongong Wolves. He is currently, at time of recording, playing against Central Coast and probably doing his best to stop Usain Bolt getting a professional contract. But what was your read on his performance last season? I think it makes sense why he's gone to an NPL level, but he was certainly a valid contributor to the premiership winning season last year.
Yeah, definitely. yeah, it was really good to see him come to the club. Yeah, unfortunately, Ryan Grant, after he's on the back of his 2016-17 season where he scored the equaliser in that final, and then got named in the Socceroos squad. Me and a lot of other players thought that he'd probably even lock down that right back spot for the World Cup. But yeah, him tearing his ACL obviously threw that plan out the window, and yeah, we sort of didn't really have like a ready-made backup. So I think it was shrewd recruitment getting Wilkshire back over from Russia back home, and yeah, he slotted right in there, and he sort of didn't really miss a beat. We all sort of thought when Ryan Grant went down injured that yeah, we'd be in trouble, and yeah, we didn't know how we'd defend our title. But yeah, Wilkshire did not let us down. He played really well and pretty much played a similar game, like that high press up and down the sideline. He did not look like a 36-year-old out there. His legs just kept going, and he's whipping in some great crosses, and even scored a cracker against, I think, was it Newcastle? And he celebrated like a madman and said it was all due to his new boots.
He scored a goal against us, and I remember him pulling out the old polish his own boot.
Yeah, that's it. It was against, yeah, that's right. That was the one.
He did that about 25 feet from me, and so he's a unique one because he spent so much of his career playing in Russia, which doesn't get such a great media coverage within Australia. So I didn't realise what a massive shithouse he actually was until he came back and started playing with Sydney.
Yeah, it was really good to watch, and I think we were all sort of surprised when Arnie came out in the media and he goes, "Yep, look, we've signed Luke Wilkshire, and I'm very confident in his ability because we've just given him a 4-day medical and he's passed with flying colours." We're like, "What the heck, 4-day medical?" And it's because he's 36 and wanted to make sure he was up to it, and he definitely didn't let us down. It was a great sort of replacement, and I guess with Ryan Grant coming back in now, back to full fitness, it's sort of like I understand why he's left as well. Yeah, just because the competition for places, I guess he wants to give back to the Wolves, and yeah, I love that he's back there and yeah, doing things for them. But yeah, we definitely appreciated his season with us. It was awesome.
Yeah. I don't know I have a feeling that Graham Arnold just deliberately did things to fuck with the media, because there is no chance that any player is undergoing a 4-day medical unless it's something like, some of the staging from E.T. or Thor when his hammer was trapped in the desert and there's like this big white tent built around Luke Wilkshire and he's just running on a treadmill for 4 days.
Well, they kept posting on the Instagram story like day after day, like Luke Wilkshire is still in for his medical, and it's either a great sort of in-house ruse from the club, or yeah, he did get put through his paces pretty diligently.
Or if he underwent a triple bypass or something like that, just to see if he had the aerobic capacity to get to it. That and Graham Arnold's percentages about how the team was performing. I think
they were just so weird.
One of the understated highlights of last season was the percentages in terms of how Sydney FC were performing. I don't think the team ever got above 78% in terms of their percentage.
We loved how it started off with like your 50s, your 75s, like your multiples of 25, and then it sort of broke down into the 10s. Oh, we're at 50%, 60% kind of thing. Then it went to the 5s, and then he comes out with 41%. Like,
not just 41%. We were 41% for 50% of the game.
Oh, it's just ridiculous.
and demanding an apology from Adam Peacock. That
was another highlight of his tenure. That was awesome.
What an absolute wind-up merchant shithouse Graham Arnold is. He should go into, if there's an unofficial A-League Hall of Fame, and we may start it on this podcast here today, Graham Arnold interviews probably top of the list and a first ballot Hall of Famer.
There were some great ones. Some seriously great ones.
So the next one, and I know this one's probably going to hit pretty hard, the Wizard of Woy Woy has returned home. Matt Simon heading back to Central Coast Mariners on a free.
Well, to be honest, when we signed Simon, I was thinking this is a ridiculous signing. Why we signed him? He has been. I was not a fan, and I think a lot of the rest of the league still held that opinion throughout his whole time at Sydney. But yeah, I guess we, as fans, just sort of warmed to him. Like he did not score many goals. I think he played like over 60 games and he got like 4 or 5 goals in his whole time, which is pretty average for a striker. But he definitely did not let the club down. Like he played with 100% heart and commitment every time he came on. And yeah, we called him the elbows and we called him the yellow card waiting to happen. All this stuff. Like I think he only got booked a couple of times, and then he got that infamous red card for retaliating after the spitting incident against the Raw. But he was just a lovable guy. Like he didn't really play with too much clinical talent, I guess, as a striker. Even though he scored all those goals for the Mariners and is having a killer preseason this season. But yeah, he just something about him. You just loved it when he came on. It's 70th minute. You'd see the fourth officials board go up, and you're like, it's Simon time. Here he comes, and it was just great. He's a really good fella, and good to have at the club. And I think his role was actually pretty understated. He definitely did come on and rattle the defences, and we definitely scored some late goals because of the work that he did on the defences.
I 100% agree. I think he'll be one of those players where you kind of forget about him quite a bit, and then 3 years down the track, Alex Wilkinson will release his best-selling novel, and he will talk about every time you saw Matt Simon getting subbed on in the last 15 minutes, the opposition centre-backs just went, for fuck's sake.
Because no thanks.
And we spoke about it earlier with Graham Arnold. I would love to get some sort of audio transcript of him trying to convince Matt Simon to come down to the club and being like, listen, mate, you're going to get 15 minutes every week. It's going to be the last 15 minutes. You're going to go out there, you're going to act like a shithouse. And while you mentioned the card tally doesn't look that bad if you do it on an appearance basis. But if you did it minutes to yellow cards received...
Oh, yeah, it'd be awful.
Yeah, horrendous.
And there were definitely a lot of yellow cards that should have been given that he didn't get. So I think, he escaped that one for sure. But it was a classic.
I'm a little bit unique in that I see the value in shithousery. I quite enjoy Sergio Ramos as a player. I think... he's perhaps a bigger reason for Real Madrid's dominance in Europe than Cristiano Ronaldo in his ability to control games and control management. I agree. I think Matt Simon is in a similar vein. I think Sydney FC is as good as the likes of Holosko, Bobo, Adrian, Ninkovic, all these phenomenal imports that we've seen. The likes of Alex Wilkinson, who I'll dedicate an entire podcast to later on in the season, and you are welcome to join me.
I love that, man. I will definitely be joining.
Alex Brosk and Matt Simon, David Carney, the general shithousery around Sydney over the last couple of seasons is as big a reason behind their dominant performances in the league as any of those quality imports are. So, I think it is a good time for him to go to Central Coast as well. I think it's what they need. I wouldn't have sneezed or looked down on it if he had rocked up at Melbourne City.
That's awesome. I did hear Mark Mulvey talking about why he brought him back as well, and he sort of wanted to change the culture, and so he's brought back Simon and McGlinchey, who have both won the title with Central Coast. And I think as much as we'll miss him as a player, I think we sort of owe it to him to let him go back and be part of that Mariners rebuild as well. So thanks for the 3 years that he spent with us, but
the other one, and I'm going to be honest, I completely forgot he was part of the squad. Fabio Ferreira has headed to Perth.
Yeah, look, Fabio Ferreira was an interesting one. We knew he was training with the squad for maybe a month or two before he was even announced, and it became a bit of a joke on Twitter with all us fans just saying, announce Ferreira. And then he appeared in the squad list on the club's website without a portrait and stuff. It was just a silhouette, and we're like, why is he on the squad but he hasn't been announced? And then he got announced, and we're like, oh, sweet. And he sat on the bench for a while, and we're like, come on, we need some pace. Put Fabio Ferreira on. We need some pace. And he only made a couple of appearances. I think he played more Champions League games than A-League games, which, for me, I think he would have been good if Arnie played him more. But I can't put my finger on why not. So, on terms of on-field value, I guess we sort of won't really miss him because he was barely on the field. But that's a puzzling one. I think he would have been pretty good.
I find him intriguing. So basically, I've abandoned the concept of me being an impartial host. I am now going down the idea that I'll get your opinion because I think you're adding really great content. But then I'll also put in my 2 cents because I just can't help myself. Fabio Ferreira is somehow still getting A-League contracts based on 3 decent games he played for Adelaide in 2014. And just, because he's still... I could be wrong, and feel free to correct me and put it in all caps on Twitter or in the chat below. I think he's still a visa player. I think he's still officially a Portuguese international, though surely he couldn't be far from being naturalised at this point.
I think he doesn't have a citizenship, but he didn't count as a visa player for us. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that he
like-
didn't. I think we only ever had 4 visa players last year.
I think what you're saying makes sense, but I still, I could be wrong. It'll be interesting to find out when he's actually at Perth if he qualifies as an Australian player and is within their cap, or if he's actually still taking up a visa position for them, because he's just, like, I don't mind him. He's not bad. He's a decent squad player, but at no point should any club realistically think about wasting an international spot on Fabio Ferreira.
5, exactly.
And Sydney is probably the one team in the last 2 years that has had the capacity to throw away an international position. So that next one, Anthony Kalic, really didn't make headway. He was on loan last season from Hajduk Split in Croatia. He has returned there. I think he's still only 21 years old. Obviously a tough midfield to break into.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he and Zavella, who we were talking about earlier, were used a lot in those Champions League games where O'Neill and Brillante were rested. But I think the conditioning played a part in Brillante and O'Neill just running their guts out for 90 minutes every week and not needing a rest, I guess. So they never got injured. They played every game, every minute. So I think that position that both Kalic and Zavella were trying to break into was just so well occupied throughout the whole year. So it was good to sort of have them as cover, and they were no slouches when they came in. They were good players and stuff, but just, it's too hard to break into. So I think in terms of having that depth, we still got Zavella. So fingers crossed nothing happens to Brillante or O'Neill again this season as well. So we sort of won't need that depth. But we are sort of we do have 3 players for those 2 positions. So fingers crossed that they all stay healthy and we won't miss him too much. But it would be kind of good to have another player like him that sort of slots in that central midfield role.
Yeah, I think a decent shout there as well. So the next one, the star, really, or the breakout star of Sydney FC's first season in the league, back in the inaugural A-League season, David Carney has been released. He is now 36 years old. What are some favourite memories of everybody's favourite Ginger Robert Perez?
Mate, to be honest, I am definitely in the minority here, but I was a Sydney FC fan who could not get behind David Carney. He seemed to always play for the foul and always be whinging, and I just didn't rate it. And I think my favourite memory of him was him scoring a goal off a handball and then offside goal or something against Victory. We won 2-1, and he came off the bench, got a double, and they were both illegitimate goals. And I think he clearly knew it, but he was just playing the victim. Like, oh, what the heck? I didn't know I touched it. Like, I didn't touch it, sir. It wasn't me. And I think that, you got to sort of love it about him, but also just so frustrating. Like, there were so many times in the box he'd go down so easy when he could have just had a shot and scored anyway. And I don't know. He's a great servant for the club. I didn't like how when he was Newcastle's best player a couple of seasons ago, and we sort of stole him out from them and didn't really need him and didn't really use him. I didn't like the way in which he just agreed to ditch Newcastle in that way. And I don't know, I think it's definitely time that he did move on. He sort of was slowing up a bit, but you can't fault how good he was in the first season. And he did love Sydney, and he was well liked by a lot of fans. But I'm not too fussed that he's gone, to be honest.
I appreciate the fact that you haven't staunchly taken the Sydney FC route. I haven't yet done the Western Sydney podcast, but I will hold them to the same lofty standard. I think what is most telling about David Carney is that his final act in the league is to get headbutted by the opposition assistant manager. Yeah,
exactly. And he definitely had it coming. He probably said some stupid comment and fired him up and brought it upon himself anyway. So he deserved it.
Yeah. So the other one, and now we start getting into real interesting territory. Adrian Mazievski, and yes, I did practice that pronunciation for 45 minutes in the mirror beforehand, has headed to Changchun Yatai in China for 1.2 million Australian dollars. What are your thoughts on Adrian? Obviously, tremendous quality, but he needs sort of like a Jiminy Cricket style cricket on his shoulder to be his conscience, because nobody has ever been as invested in their own ability as Adrian.
I agree. When McCormack left the league, I think after scoring 4 free kicks like halfway through the season, I can't remember who it was on Twitter, but someone was like, "Oh, congratulations, McCormack! He scored the most free kicks in the regular season." And Mijewski just tweeted him, "Wait for me, I'm not done yet," or whatever. And you just love that cocky attitude that he had. It was so funny, and
so
his celebration with his muscles and stuff was ridiculous.
He's a 5'9", 75 kilo white Polish man who flexes after every celebration. But so the other one that was a cracker, it was also on Twitter. Someone put together a goals and assists package for him and put it on YouTube with like a 2002 Linkin Park soundtrack, which is the long-running theme in these podcasts. And he went back to that same person on Twitter and asked them to put one together for chances created, passes to assists, and I can't remember what the other one was, his pass completion rate. And he did it.
Is that funny?
I know text is always tough when you read it and you're limited in characters, and he's obviously tweeting in a second language. But it looked deadpan, like he wanted the person to go and add more contributions to a highlights package they'd already put together, which isn't... I have limited experience at video editing, and pretty much this episode's going to go up on YouTube with one background the entire time. But he has asked some teenage child in the suburbs of Sydney to go and put a highlight package together for him. And I think that is probably the greatest summation of his contribution. But having said that, phenomenal player, phenomenal year last year. And I think the fee, which I could be wrong, but I believe is the biggest transfer fee ever paid for an A-League player at the time, is very much reflective of his ability.
Yeah, I agree. And as self-confident as he was, he definitely earned the right after winning the Johnny Warren, and just playing such exciting football the whole season. I think it's going to be weird not having him, because he definitely just sort of roamed around the field. He didn't really have a set position. I guess he and Ninkovic both played in that number 10 role, but Ninkovic was often found a lot wider, and Mijewski sort of roamed around that whole width of the pitch wherever he saw fit. So it was an interesting way that his play sort of fit into Sydney's structure, but we're definitely going to miss his output. He definitely created a lot of chances, and just was dazzling quite a few, if not all of the opposition defences. But I think the money that we got, like obviously towards the end of his contract, he was unhappy, so he wanted to get paid more. And I think the money that we got for him, obviously justifies his quality, and has been helpful in terms of recruiting to replace him this season. So
I think it serves to highlight two things. One, the tremendous work that Alex Brosk has done late in his career in terms of the way that he's changed his game. So essentially, for those of you that are listening for the first time, Sydney has played what is out of possession a 4-2-3-1 with Brosk as a 10. Just doing doggies so that the likes of Mijewski and Ninkovic don't have to do anything. And then in possession, a 4-4-2, getting out of their way so that they have space to cut inside. So Adrian playing on the right, cutting inside to his favoured left, and Ninkovic playing on the left-hand side, cutting into his favoured right. It did so much to free up the likes of Michael Zulu, who played at Melbourne City and was average at best, and Ryan Grant, who we spoke about earlier, and Luke Wilkshire last season. The way that they were set up in terms of those inside forward roles, or inverted playmaker, if you want to think of it that way, both stepping inside of that 10 position, is a credit to Alex Brosk. And I think the other portion is a real credit to the backroom staff, the director of football and the board, that they signed Adrian to a 3-year contract inside the salary cap to bring him
phenomenal.
in.
Phenomenal piece of business.
If you were going to do, and we may do it later in the season, depending if I can find other examples, the best pieces of back office business, and Melbourne City's done quite a few, but also this one for Sydney FC, locking him to a 3-year deal from the off, sight unseen, with the potential to eventually make profit off him, and then being willing to maximise that profit. To be brutally honest, Sydney FC will run their core squad, not their marquees, but their core squad on his transfer fee alone for the next season, which is a phenomenal return for any club. Yeah,
it's fantastic. And I think you sort of have to do that. If the player wants, if he wants out, you sort of got to let him go. You don't want to keep him around and be unhappy. And whilst he was an incredible servant for the club and definitely won us a lot of points, a lot of games, it's definitely the best outcome for the situation, I think.
Yeah, we do see it quite often in the league, and that is probably one of the handicaps of the salary cap, and we'll do another episode on salary cap, but if you have a player that comes in and performs above expectation, that's currently underneath that. The expectation is that they'll get marquee wages. Recent examples, Harry Navillo, 10 goals, 10 assists, and wanted 20 grand a week. The likes of Leroy George from Melbourne Victory last season had an okay season in what was probably an underperforming Victory side, but wanted marquee wages. Adrian, there's no way I think Sydney could have kept him without elevating him to marquee status. A pretty I know it sucks for fans, and there's probably a whole bunch of people that'll turn around and bash us on Twitter, but I think you got just returns for his value to the team this year. The other one as well is Bobo, and that one's probably a little bit more of a surprise, but I did a bit of research into Alanyaspor, who's picked him up, and they've actually been taken over by a billionaire business magnate who has been aggressively pursuing Turkish talent, not just within the league itself, but also based in other regions around the world. 800,000 Australian dollars for a player who's 32 and probably doesn't have that much high-level football ahead of him, albeit like a quality player and not taking away from him. Not a bad return for a player at that age.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bobo's an intriguing one. And obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, I was in Russia while the whole saga went down, so I didn't hear all the mail, if I'm completely honest.
First and foremost, I'm going to congratulate you for getting about 50 minutes into the podcast before you actually dropped the fact that you were in Russia for the most recent World Cup period, but we'll go through that a little bit further down the track. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, so I think I'm just going off sort of what I heard from a distance, but it sounded like because Bobo was announced for a 1-year extension as a marquee, and obviously we had our marquee spots filled with him and Ninkovic. So what I think happened was Adrian sort of kicked up a fuss, asking for more money and marquee status, and I think what I heard was Bobo approached the club and said he was obviously not happy to leave, but he would agree to leave if the club wanted to sign Adrian as the marquee instead. And so Bobo did leave, but then Adrian left too because he was so unhappy by that point. So I think the Bobo situation, if that's all exactly how it went down, is a frustrating one in the sense that he had signed a deal for this upcoming season, and it could have been honoured and he could still be with us. We're definitely going to miss his output. Obviously, 27 goals in 28 games. He's best in the league history. He definitely even missed a few chances as well that he should have scored. So I think we're definitely going to miss having that kind of player spearhead the attack. But in saying that, 800,000 Australian for a 32-year-old is also a decent piece of business, and I definitely think we've replaced him pretty well as well. So I think when it all happened, it was a bit of a crisis, and I think everyone was sort of losing their minds. But I think the way that the club's replaced both those players is a credit to the club, and I think it's got us all calm and quietly optimistic for the season ahead.
Now you're jumping ahead in the run sheet, but yes, I do agree with what you're saying, but we'll go through some of those players in a moment. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and he was just one of those, he was in a Berbatov mode, where he wouldn't do anything for 75 minutes of a game, but that time, that half scrap of a chance arrived, the quality and technique showed through, and he would finish those chances, which it kind of makes him a tough one to measure his value, because different to Adrian, he never took control of a game.
Yeah, definitely.
But if he was going to be a person where a cross came in or the ball hit the deck in the box, you would back Bobo 10 times out of 10 to read that play, read that passage, and get the team over the line. And I think there were quite a few. Now, this isn't taking anything away from Sydney's performances and how good they've been, but quite a lot, I think, last season, as the rest of the league caught up to the standards they were setting, those sort of 1-0, 2-1 victories, Bobo was incredibly important, because when it came down to a game of who was going to take their half chances better, his quality showed through. So while I do think they've recruited very well, and we'll get to that in a moment, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out throughout the course of the season. So obviously disappointing to see Adrian and Bobo leave the league, but again, and this is a long-running theme in all of these podcasts, the overall quality of the league seems to be improving quite a bit, and it'll be interesting to see how other players step up and fill that particular role.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so the next one, and I've already mentioned it, contract extensions. Alex Wilkinson is someone that I have nothing but time for as a player and generally as a human being. I was a huge fan when he was at Central Coast. He played about 5 games, and they were probably the best 5 defensive performances I've ever seen at Melbourne City, and he's now been at Sydney FC for a good few years. He signed a 2-year contract extension. It will take him to 34 years old, but he shows absolutely no signs of slowing down. What are your thoughts on your captain, Alex Wilkinson?
Right, Alex Wilkinson is just, Mr. Reliable. He's awesome. I think losing Geordie Boyce is slightly negated by the fact that he stayed and that he's still controlling the defence. I think he is such a different character to Geordie Boyce. Like Boyce obviously was very personable and very passionate, and he sort of got a bit fiery in some situations and stuff, especially with in that Newcastle game. But yeah, the presence of Wilkinson is just awesome. He's super calm. He's super organised, and you can definitely even just hear him on the field, organising the back line and talking with Redmayne. And he definitely runs the show from the back of the field, and he's just such a good guy, such a fair player, and really am glad that he's signed for 2 more years because he's going to be a very hard player to replace.
Definitely. We will do a podcast later this year, and I'll probably try and get as many people involved as possible where we talk about if there is going to be an A-League Hall of Fame, which players they would put forward, and I 100% would be an advocate for Alex Wilkinson going through as one of those key players. Just the things that he's done and the quality that he's brought to the league. He really was ahead of his time, I think, in terms of player production. And I still think he's in the best 3 or 4, not just A-League central defenders, but Australian central defenders available. And the other thing that counts against him is that he's only playing 27 games a year, albeit for family reasons. I'm going to fire through the next couple relatively quickly. And then we might go back and revisit a couple of the key ones. Chris Zavella, a youngster we've mentioned earlier, has signed a 1-year extension. Alex Brosk has signed a 1-year extension. Milos Ninkovic for 2 years. Bobo signed a 1-year contract extension on the eve of signing for Alanyaspor just so they could receive a transfer fee. Charles Lokalingoi has signed a 1-year extension, and Paulo Retre has signed a 1-year extension as well. Obviously, first and foremost, we spoke about it earlier, but Bobo, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're ever going to leave a team, I think he set standards for the division entirely as to how you go about that. And what we consistently see is young Australian players continue to ask for mutual terminations of their contract or have clauses written in where they can leave for overseas teams. Huge credit to Bobo and his character and what I think will eventually be his legacy in the league. Obviously, I think that goal scoring record will stay for quite a while, but also the way, just for Sydney FC fans personally, the way that he left the club, signing a contract extension so that they could receive a transfer fee, says a lot about his character.
Yeah, fantastic bloke, and he'll definitely be missed. He just the way that he conducted himself all season, the whole time he was at the club. Yeah, it's just fantastic.
So I'm going to split these into 2 groups now. Alex Brosk and Milos Ninkovic re-signing. What are your thoughts on both of those?
I think they are both fantastic. Broski's birthday is actually today. He's turned 35, so I think a 1-year extension is probably in the best interests of both the club and him, because obviously getting a bit old, you sort of don't know how long the body's going to hold up. So I think him being re-signed on year-to-year basis is great for both parties.
And of course, happy birthday to Alex Brosk, fan of the show.
Yep, definitely. And I think Ninkovic with a 2-year extension is fantastic. I think he'll hopefully see out his career at Sydney FC, and he's talking about keeping his family settled in Sydney, and giving back to the game once he does decide to hang up the boots. So I think it's fantastic that they're both sort of key members of the first team as well, and have put in some fantastic performances across the past 2 seasons. So it's great to see them rewarded with new contracts, and happy for both of them, and happy as a fan because they've still got plenty to offer.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating about the Ninkovic one especially is that he, less than 18 months ago, was talking about his need to return home and be closer to his parents, who are obviously now well and truly into their 60s and perhaps even 70s. But now he's been in Australia for 3 years. he has a young daughter who has grown up in the Australian community and speaks English and is now going to enter the school system in Sydney. Which it's just those sort of fascinating behind the scenes things that you don't really think about when you look at it as being a football club. But the fact that his daughter is settled and understands Sydney as a community, that he's signed on for another 2 years, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Mama and Papa Ninkovic signed on for multiple years as both a groundsman and a canteen lady in the next few seasons, just to try and bring them across and be a part of the culture. But I think it's really easy and a really understated thing about this league that it is a massive cultural shift from being away from your family in Europe. And even with coaches, obviously Sydney doesn't have this problem with Steve Corica, but the likes of Marco Kurz at Adelaide, the likes of Marcus Babbel now at Western Sydney, these are people that are picking up their lives and coming down to bring it down here. We're not just your 14 hours on a plane away or 20 hours in certain situations. You're also living your life on an entirely different body clock and an entirely different time frame than other people. So I think Ninkovic is good. I don't think he's necessarily in the conversations that some Sydney FC fans about being the best player the league's ever seen. But great to see him committing for another 2 seasons, and hopefully that means he sets up his family here. Hopefully that means he becomes a youth and junior coach here, and hopefully we see some of those key learnings and teachings that other marquees and other international signings haven't perhaps passed on to the Australian footballing culture, passed on through the Ninkovic family for years to come.
Yeah, and I do think his role is often understated as well, because the season before the last, he did win the Johnny Warren, and he lit it up as a creative number 10. And then when Adrian came, he sort of did take a back seat and adapted his game to facilitate the whole team. And he sort of took what seemed like a back seat, but he was still so subtly crucial to us as well. So I think,
and he did take a pay cut, and he's now within the salary cap, so there is room for we'll get to the marquee players shortly, but he did actually take a pay cut to get a 2-year contract and fit himself within the salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what it is that you're doing at Sydney, but with the likes of Ninkovic and Bobo, you definitely have to be doing something right, because everybody's invested in the project above and beyond Graham Arnold leaving. So the next 3 I'll throw pretty much tied together. Zavella, Lokalingoi and Paulo Retre all signing 1-year contract extensions. Zavella and Lokalingoi, obviously youth prospects coming through the Sydney FC youth team, and Paulo Retre spent many years at Melbourne Heart and Melbourne City before kind of stacking his claim as a utility player for Sydney FC. What are your thoughts on the 3 of them?
I think Zavella, I have only seen 2 or 3 games I've been playing. I think he's done really well. He sort of surprised me the first time I saw him. I think he's got very good composure for his age, and he does really sort of control the tempo when he plays. So it's good to have someone like that who's willing to sort of work hard and try and break in, but sort of accept a bit of a backseat kind of role with those players in front of him. I think the same with Charles. I think he probably needs a bit more time, and he needs a goal just for his confidence. He's made some fantastic runs and butchered some sitters at the end of last season, but I think that's just nerves. And I think once he gets the first one, I think his speed and his positioning will hopefully live up to the raps that Arnie gave him. And he's got a fantastic record at youth level, so I think it's just getting that first goal out of the way. I think he'll be a great deputy up top. And I think Retre as well. I remember Ryan Grant used to be that utility role at Sydney, and then when Arnie came to the club, he sort of made his intentions clear that Grant was going to be the starting right back, and we kind of didn't really have a utility for a couple of years, and then we got Retre, and he's started at he started on the wing, he started at both wing backs, he started at centre mid, he started at number 10. Like he's definitely just plugging all those holes. And he's good. I rated him at City, and I thought City were a bit not foolish, like he wasn't a key cog in their team, but I think they definitely missed a trick letting him go. And I'm a grateful Sydney fan, because he's definitely sort of underestimated, and whenever he comes on, he definitely plays pretty well.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things that happen. Basically, there's different contract stipulations within what you can do in a salary cap. You're required to have a certain amount of players under the age of 23 each year. I didn't mind Paulo Retre, but I don't. So we were quite lucky at that time. We had the likes of, and they've moved on now, but Jacob Mellon, Stefan Mork, Ben Garuccio, Bruce Kamau, Ruin Tonjic, a whole bunch of different players that were perhaps superior to him at an under 23 level. And once he hit that 23 age gap and he no longer qualified as being a player that would fit under that kind of tax break that you get, or that break within the salary cap that you get, it wasn't possible to give him the sort of deal that he required. But definitely a serviceable lieutenant, but he was obviously going to be better served at a club or in a team where he was going to get more frequent football and where he wasn't as big a detriment to the cap as perhaps we see with Melbourne City. So no criticism of him, but I think there is an age gap on certain people. Like the way the current salary cap is structured and set, it's never going to thrive for anybody that is a late in life bloomer, nobody that hits their form at 27. And I think he may be that case. He wasn't perhaps the best when he was 19, 20, but I think we're kind of seeing now him being more comfortable in the league. And I think the easy thing to forget about Zavella and Locolingo is that they're both still teenagers. When you've got a team as good as Sydney has been and a player misses a sitter, you kind of forget that he's only 18 or 19.
Yeah, exactly. You sort of think this is the benchmark of the A-League at the moment, and you're missing that one. What's going on? And you definitely do forget that. So
and he's probably the unlucky loser. He's probably the unlucky loser in the fact that Bobo has put away every half chance that has ever fallen his way. You become accustomed to seeing those sort of things. So we'll move into players in, which is a bit of an exciting column. Not the most that you've ever seen, but I think what is a key reflection is that when we've gone through certain teams that have struggled in recent years, they've had 10 to 15 new players come in, whereas teams that have performed very well, we've only seen 4 or 5 changes. The first of which is Trent Bahuja from Central Coast Mariners. If you listen to our season preview for Central Coast, we did highlight Trent a little bit. Obviously, rapid pace, and his other key attribute is that his sister will defend him on Instagram or Facebook if anyone ever criticises him. But what are your thoughts on his signing?
Well, I've been super surprised by him. I knew he was the fastest player at the Mariners, and when they got rid of him, the Mariners just signed Bolton instead, so that's fair enough. But they're not going to miss his speed. But.
Yeah, so I made an assumption that Usain Bolt's contract has a clause in it where they would release anybody who potentially was going to beat him over 20 yards.
That's fair enough. That's probably why he's at Sydney then. But he's super fast. He's I think he didn't play too big a role at the Mariners when he was there. I guess in a struggling side, so he wasn't noticed as much. But in this preseason, he scored some crackers, especially the FFA Cup. He scored some really good goals, and that one last week or week before against Western Sydney, when he just showed so much composure in front of goal. Like he used his speed to sort of get in that gap, and I don't know, it was just really refreshing to see a young player like that just have that much composure and positional awareness. And I really think it's going to be tough to see where he slots in, just because we're so stacked. We've got like 6 good players to fit in that front 4, and I think every time he started and played, he's definitely staked his claim to be starting in that regularly. And I'm excited to see what he can do for the rest of the year. It's an exciting signing for sure.
Yeah, I think his biggest difficulty, so if you followed him when he's represented like the Australian under-19 team, the Australian under-23 side, he plays as a central striker.
Yep.
But a lot of the league appearances he's made for both Central Coast and now for Sydney as well have been in wide positions just due to the pace that he has. So I think one portion of it comes down to player preference and where he wants to be playing. And then the other portion comes down to his training performance, his game performance, and what suits his best traits. So if you can get him brought into playing one of those wide positions, he's certainly going to be a fantastic asset to have come off the bench each season or in each game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it's really exciting. And to see someone like with that much skill set, it seems like he's definitely worked on his composure since he's been at Sydney, because I definitely don't remember that while he was at the Mariners. But it would be great to see him, sort of pushing for a starting spot each week and having a really exciting breakout year.
I'll remind you of that in round 5 when one of his 1v1 opportunities hits you in the face in Road J.
Yeah, that's probably going to happen.
So the next one, and I kind of have to just bite my tongue on this one because obviously Melbourne City has been the beneficiary of rule changes before that allowed us to sign Tim Cahill on a season-long guest contract. Daniel De Silva has joined from Central Coast Mariners on a season-long interleague loan, the first of its kind, and at the time of recording, still the only one of its kind.
I understand the timing and everything frustrated every other fan, and trust me, if it happened to someone else, I'd be as frustrated. But I think it's a great initiative from the FFA, and I think that, other clubs should use it, and I hope will use it in the future. Because I think, in the case of De Silva, I don't quite understand why he wasn't going to stay at the Mariners, because it's not like there's a lot of stars sort of keeping him out of the first team. But I think him coming, wanting to learn and wanting to have a really good season under like some fantastic coaching staff and play alongside players that have pretty much been in first place for the past 2 seasons is really good, in the sense that we got a committed player who's really keen to prove himself and play really well. I definitely do have sympathy for the rest of the league in terms of the way it was announced, and it was only a couple of hours after the rule change was announced, so it would definitely be frustrating as an opposition fan. But I'm glad that he's at the club, and I think when he does play, he'll have a good impact. He's looking good in pre-season again. Yeah,
so I can shed a little bit of light on that for you. This is what I am, Sam. I'm a facilitator. I sift through the trash of the A-League so that you don't have to. He actually had a clause in his contract. So when he signed for Central Coast, he signed a 3-year deal on the proviso that they'd pay out the rest of his contract with Roma, so he could be free of that burden. And also, he had a clause signed in there that if Paulo Ocon was ever fired or sacked, that he was free to leave to any international team. He initially expressed interest that he was going to leave to go to an international league, and he didn't care where. And then Sydney FC presented the opportunity to take him on a season-long loan. Given the fact that he's on a 3-year deal, he's already had 1 year with the Mariners, it started very well, and he had 4 great games and then did nothing for the rest of the season. They can now loan him out to Sydney FC for a season and still have another season with him under contract coming back to Central Coast. Fingers crossed, I think, for them, having not played a lot of football, and he's desperate for game time at that stage, being 23 years old and kind of getting to the edge of that being, a promising youngster and now being someone that you expect to fulfill their potential. So what I don't understand with this one, and this is me taking off my impartial host hat, which is, let's be completely honest, I've not worn it for even a minute of this podcast. But if we're pretending, if I put it back on, I think the frustration is not necessarily with Sydney, but with the FFA itself. FFA itself. That's me accidentally putting on my local state league player hat, taking that one off and putting on my FFA fan hat. It's a half measure. What people have been crying out for is the ability to have loan and transfer signings between clubs within the league, so that the likes of Trent Bohuja, Daniel De Silva, what's another good example? Let's use Paulo Rattray as an example, even though he's probably not entirely. Anthony Kalic. Sydney FC can pay Central Coast $100,000. Sign over his rights, sign him to a 2-year deal. Central Coast gets revenue that they are desperately in need of. They don't have to worry about negotiating with the player for a mutual termination of their contract. Under a mutual termination term, you actually have to pay out the contract as an employer. So it's going to cost Central Coast $100,000, to get him out of that deal for the remaining 2 years, with no chance of getting any recoup through a transfer fee or anything to that extent. Instead, what they did is they took a half step and they said, okay, we'll allow loans. And that makes sense if, let's use an example last season for Sydney FC. Say Ryan Grant goes down with his ACL injury, but someone like at Central Coast, like Storm Roo or Adam Berry, is starting the season incredibly strongly, and they want to bring them across to Sydney FC to, 1, get game minutes, and 2, cover a long-term injury loan replacement. That, as far as a loan signing is concerned, makes a tremendous amount of sense. But what doesn't make sense is where Central Coast are effectively shorn of their best player to go to Sydney FC, where realistically he's going to be the 13th, 14th, 15th best player in that particular squad and in that particular lineup. What they should have done is taken the full step, allowed transfer fee to be paid, Sydney FC determine an amount, $100,000, $200,000, pay Central Coast in a lump sum, take his wages on board as part of their salary cap, and then Central Coast receives something for the player receives something in terms of the moves that he already wanted, and Sydney FC receives something in terms of the player. And I think one of the biggest frustrations, not just in terms of Sydney FC, but the league as a whole, is that consistently we see with the FFA, and there'll be a whole other episode on the FFA and the things that they do, but we consistently see them take half measures when perhaps a full step is what's best for the league in terms of progressing on an international stage, if you understand where I'm getting.
Yeah, I definitely understand. And I think because it hasn't really hurt Sydney in a way, like we've benefited from this situation, I think I saw it as more of a positive step in the right direction. But yeah, 100% agree that transfer fees between clubs and even loan agreements are just long overdue and need to be introduced pretty much as soon as possible.
There's a list about 25 things long, of things that are long overdue for the Under-A League. But
mate, I agree.
let's not bury our future content. Let's keep the listener keen. Let's give them those little nibbles of the biscuit, and then later on give them the whole thing.
We'll talk about it in a later episode.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'll definitely have you on for that one as well. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it, and I understand that I've thrown the impartial referee portion entirely out the window, but I've recorded a couple episodes back to back now. I'm about 6 whiskeys deep. These things are going to start creeping out into the game. But what we do get to do is turn towards some of the international signings that Sydney FC have made. The first of which, Joop van der Linden, has joined from AZ Alkmaar. He has a pretty decent pedigree. He's made a ton of appearances in the Eredivisie over in Holland, and he has also won the league with that AZ team that was coached by Steve McLaren. Oh, no, take that back. Immediately take that back. He was part of that AZ team that actually won the Eredivisie in 2012, I think it was. What are your thoughts and read on him early in the season? We spoke about Jordy Boyce. It looks like he's a pretty different player and probably similar in the mould to Alex Wilkinson. What do you think will happen with him this season?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that he knows Jordy Boyce, and they kind of spoke before van der Linden did sign, so everyone kind of thought, he'll be a like-for-like replacement. But yeah, you're right, he's definitely very different. He seems like he is a little bit calmer on the ball, if that makes sense. But yeah, what I've seen from him so far in pre-season is a little bit more route one, straight up the middle kind of ball, which I'm not the hugest fan of, but I have seen him make some crucial tackles and sort of keep his head in terms of organisation, and he also claims to take killer free kicks as well. So just what we're going back to the Dutch centre backs taking free kicks, then hopefully we get to see some of them as well. But yeah, he seems pretty good. I think the jury's still. I haven't seen enough of him to make a full-on judgment yet, but the signs are there that he'll slot straight in and deputise well to Alex Wilkinson, and we'll have another strong defensive line this season.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you use the phrase like-for-like replacement. I do think they saw, okay, we've had one international centre-back go out. Let's bring in another international centre-back, and let's have their names not be that Dutch. Different. Let's have them both be Dutch because it just makes sense, and let's have them both have similar amounts of experience within the Eredivisie itself. Time will tell. Consistently, I think if you look at the great teams in the A-League, it's always been, and this is one specifically for centre-backs that are listening, there's a stopper and a cover. Stopper's the one that steps to the ball, cover's the one that drops in behind, almost as a sweeper if you play that system in your own, Football Manager series, FIFA series, Sunday League team. I think at the moment, and this is one of the few, and it's very few holes I could poke in Sydney, they've currently got 2 players who'd probably prefer to play as the cover rather than the stopper. So it'll be interesting to see how he and Alex Wilkinson build a relationship together. But again, we don't entirely know how Steve Corica is going to line this team up and if there's going to be a tactical tweak or a tactical adjustment and they're going to play a little bit differently in terms of their structure. So time remains the fact, but I at least want to write down someone somewhere, whoever's keeping archives of this shit, that I said potentially Joop van der Linden and Alex Wilkinson maybe too similar a player to play together as a central defensive partnership. But at least you have depth, at least you have Ryle to call on, at least you have Calver, at least you have other options available if it doesn't work out the way we hope.
Yeah, and we've got Warland injured as well, and I think that's a bit of a shame because he is out for 3 months. So I think that would have been really good to see Corica sort of chop and change and experiment which pairing works the best. But yeah, we'll see later on.
Your depth is scary enough that I forgot he'd gotten injured.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. So the next one, Adam Le Fondre, or Le Fonda, depending how you want to pronounce that one. I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments below. Has a tremendous scoring pedigree, most recently with Bolton Wanderers in League One. But having said that, obviously a player playing in League One that was above and beyond at that particular level because he scored and assisted at a pretty frequent rate. And Bolton, of course, looking to work their way back into Championship football. Signed on a free transfer. He will be a marquee for the season ahead. What are your thoughts on him as a replacement for Bobo?
I think he's very different to Bobo. Bobo was very big, physical, he's a big target man kind of thing. Whereas Le Fondre looks a lot faster, a lot more dynamic in terms of the way that he sort of breaks through the defensive line. And he can sort of be that target man, but also, be that man who's breaking through, making the diagonal runs and stuff, holding it up for the likes of Bahaja and Broski and all those boys running through. And I really like what I've seen.
I've only seen the FFA Cup performances so far, but I see him as being in a similar mould in that poacher fashion to Ross McCormack, who we saw come through the City group and score 14 goals last season in only 13 appearances. What are the comparisons between the two players?
I think that's a good analysis in terms of the poacher, but I think even Ross McCormack didn't look like he definitely came to the league underdone. He didn't look like he was at his full fitness, and he definitely sort of found a lot more fitness towards the end of his time at City. But yeah, he was always in the right spot. He had fantastic positional awareness, and I think that's the same with Alfie. I think he's going to be really good. He already looks super fit because he started the season with Bolton, and then he played a couple of games, and then he's come back into pre-season, so he's already raring to go. And I heard him on. I heard him interviewed, and he was asked to describe his career in one word, and he said goals. And so I think that the fact that he's not daunted by Bobo's record last season is fantastic, and I really look forward to seeing if he lives up to the standards that he set himself.
So essentially what you've got is Bobo on the pitch and Adrian off the pitch in terms of social media and interview output.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how he works out. For people that I've tried to explain the A-League to that are either followers of European football or friends that I have on this podcast, for those of you that listen to the Melbourne Victory preview and also the Perth Glory one that are English themselves, I think high-level A-League teams would do well enough to survive in the Championship and probably more realistically win League One. It'll be interesting to see how he goes as a star of League One and if that transition across to be him a star of the A-League itself. I think it'll be a good marker for not just how Sydney's doing, but also how the league itself is going to progress.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so the next one, and I think this one is a phenomenal signing given that he is only 29, I think he's either just turned 30 or he's just about to turn 30. Siem de Jong, who has been a long-time Ajax player, came through their youth system, got his big money move to Newcastle for a variety of different reasons, both fitness, performance, and happiness in the area. Didn't work out for him, but he's only been back at Ajax 12 months and is now already going out on loan to Sydney FC. I will give you a quick caveat before we do that. Casper Dolberg is a phenomenal talent. Ajax obviously has a tremendous history of blooding youth and favouring youth prospects ahead of older talent. They currently have Klaas Jan Huntelaar as their backup striker with Casper Dolberg, the 19-year-old Danish international wunderkind, on their books. So obviously Siem de Jong has made way and moved to Sydney on a season-long loan, albeit as a marquee player. What's your read on that signing?
I think it's fantastic. I was so surprised when I heard about it, and I think that, from what I've seen so far here, in the 1.5 games he's played, he's been awesome. He's just such a classy player, and definitely watched him at Newcastle in the Premier League, and he's a phenomenal player. I think his injury concerns have derailed his career, and he probably we're the first to admit that, but he looks like he's in great shape, and we're definitely glad to have him. I just looked it up. He doesn't turn 30 till the end of January. So he's still a spring chicken in terms of international big money signings that the A-League's made. They always sort of seem to be over 30, and he's pretty young. And I think this is also maybe an example of the partnership that Sydney FC have with Ajax that they signed back in April. It seems that the club sort of do realise each other exist. I feel like in the A-League we sort of sometimes feel like we're a bit invisible in terms of world trade of players and transfers and stuff like that. And I think that Ajax sort of agreeing to let him come out here on a loan is a great show of respect for the league and for the club that he'll be in good hands while he's over here, and definitely grateful as a fan that we get to see him play week in, week out, because he's a fantastic talent, and if he can stay on the park, then we'll be very grateful.
All right, so I think the next one is season expectations. So obviously, coming off back-to-back first in the league finishes, what are your expectations for Sydney FC this year, knowing that they've lost a couple of their key players, they've brought in quality in replacements, and also they have a first season coach in Steve Corica? What are your expectations for the season ahead?
Well, I'm going to just go out and say it on record that I think we're going to make the top two again. Hopefully it's going to be first, but I think we've recruited well and we're playing such a great style. I don't know, maybe just as a fan I'm used to being up that end of the table, but I think we're going to make top two, and I hope we do. Big call, but
really more than anything though, man, Sam, I appreciate your time. As far as recording episodes go, this is up there amongst my favourites. We have gone literally beyond the time that I told you this would take, but I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
Mate, I've had a blast. It's been awesome.
Do you have any Twitter handles, Facebook pages of your own? Where can people find you and follow you so they can get involved with your content?
Well, as my name is as common as Sam Jones, I struggle for usernames and stuff, so I've got my Twitter handle is at UMM Sam Jones, at Sam Jones, and there's a fair bit of Sydney FC content on there, I don't have a Facebook page in terms of my reporting side of things, but send me a message or whatever if you got any questions about what I said, or if you want to correct me or tell me that my opinion's wrong, or agree, or constructive criticism, or if you want to meet up for an away day, I'm always keen to do that as well. But that's sort of how you can find me. All
right, and if you as a listener are struggling to find the correct Sam Jones out of the 6 million that are out there will be a link into his Twitter profile in the description below. Thank you so much, Sam, for joining me. Thank you so much to everyone that sat through what is a pretty long episode. We do very much appreciate your support. If you have any feedback, chuck it in the comment section below, or alternatively, you can reach out to us directly on Twitter at @inthemixer_pod. But more than anything, we just appreciate you listening and look forward to seeing you again in the Mixer.